I'm so glad you're here. I'm Kate Champion. I'm an author, therapist, and generally curious human whose life has been full of ups and downs, twists and turns, mess and adventures, some intentional and some not so much. Welcome to Living Big Mindfully, a later in life podcast. Here are 3 questions for you. Are you ready? Are you in midlife or beyond? Or maybe struggling with next steps or finding your feet? Possibly feeling like something's missing, not quite right with your life? Or maybe you have a sense that you're really not living your own truth. Okay, you're right, that was way more than 3 questions. But were there any yes answers? Yeah? Okay, fantastic. That means that you are in the right place and this is the show for you. So grab a seat, get comfy, and join us for inspiring, heartfelt conversations. Conversations with real people just like you and me. Listen in as we chat about life, love, health, healing, and thriving well into our later years. And let's commit to creating honest, fulfilling lives and giving a high five to living big mindfully. One more thing. Make sure you visit katechampionauthor.com. Check out Never Too Late and You Are Limitless, my best-selling books. And while you're there, be sure to download your free hiking guide. And remember, check out our Living Big Mindfully community on Facebook. And please share your favorite episode with your friends. Thank you so much. Okay, that is enough for me. Are you ready? Great. Then let's dive in. In this week's episode of Living Big Mindfully, I'm excited to be chatting with Tracy Read. Tracy is a true inspiration. She's a mother, a grandmother, and a lifelong career woman with a personal history of domestic violence, chaotic relationships, depression, and trauma. She has worked hard on healing and creating an intentional life. And during our conversation, Tracy openly shares many of the twists, turns, and complexities she's encountered along her path to healing. She has had to learn how to set boundaries, recognize and overcome victim mentality, and how to harness the power of courage, community, and putting yourself first. And then, after clearing out some of that trauma, Tracy recognized the need, which at 60 years old led her to create her passion-driven side hustle based on her desire to educate and keep people safe. Tracy ends the show by sharing potential life-saving tips and strategies, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Tracy Read, hi, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing so well, Kate. Thank you so much.
So great to connect with you today. We've been I feel like we're friends, but we really don't know each other that well. We've connected through my daughter, Miranda. But you have a really inspirational story, and I've been following you on Facebook and looking at some of your posts and things, and I'm just really happy that you're here today. So thank you for showing up and coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me, and you are correct. I don't really know you, but I feel like I know you through Miranda, and it's just a beautiful thing that you can actually experience even a friendship through somebody that you haven't really met yet, just by their children or their parents, and I love that.
Yeah. And I know that as moms, right, my daughter just moved to Dallas, for listeners that don't know that. And, Tracy has offered to kind of be the mama bear out there, right, with this distance. And that was so comforting to me in that moment. It's like, okay, there's somebody here, there's somebody that she can reach out to. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, she is amazing. And you've done such a great job, Kate.
Well, I
love her.
Yeah, she's a pretty awesome human. So tell me a little bit about you. I know that, kind of reading through some of your Facebook stuff, I know that you had what I call for many years, you've had this big girl job, you've had this career, you've been really, really dedicated to pharmaceuticals and research and things like that, kind of clinical trials. But then you got to a point, maybe last year, 2022, when you just kind of said, poof,
I'm kind of burnt out. I kind of had enough, and you've kind of made some changes in your life. So tell me, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
To start out, I'll tell you a little bit about me. I am a 3 times married woman. I'm 60 years old. I'm on my 3rd marriage, and thankfully it's lasted me 20 years with a lot of help. And I have 3 kids. I have a son, and then I have 2 bonus daughters, and I have 8 grandbabies, 1 boy, 7 girls. And I have been a lifetime, pretty much a career woman all my life. I've been working since I was 16 years old. I've lived on my own since I was 16 years old. I had a house when I was 16 years old. I've always worked all my life. I've just had this work ethic that, I've had to have because I didn't have parents that, my dad left my mom, when I was 5 years old. So my mother had to work and support 6 kids. So I was always had that work ethic that I knew that if I wanted anything out of life, I was going to have to work. So I've had a career all my life. 35 of those years have been in the pharma industry. So I worked at Alcon for 25 years, nearly 25 years. I got laid off and then took a 2-month break and then went into the company that I'm with now, Galderma. And I've been at Galderma for 9 years. And went into a side that I had no idea what I was doing. I was asked to go over there and do a startup and in research and development, and I did. And then that's where I've landed. And so I've been doing clinical trials for the last 7 years. And then, last year I kind of went off on this little healing journey, and it took me into some areas of my life that I have always wanted to do some things that I just never did because I was in, worked all my life. I felt like that was the thing I had to do. I feel like I think society teaches you that's what you have to do is go to work, go to have a 9 to 5. You have to have a job. And I still have that job to this day, but it's gone off on a little venture of, a little side hustle that I've taken on. And hopefully someday, I will be able to leave my 9 to 5 and go do what I want to do and do something that I love. It's not that I don't love what I'm doing now. I do, but I don't have that much freedom. And if I get my side hustle up and running, and then I can have the freedom to go travel the world and still do what I do, because what I do, I can travel the country and still educate doing what I'm doing.
So tell me a little bit about the side hustle, right? So you mentioned you're 60 years old and you kind of started, you had this kind of healing. This last year has been about healing for you, and I definitely want to talk about that as well. But tell me a little bit about being 60 and starting a side hustle. I think, again, that's totally inspirational, and I want to hear about that. So tell me more.
Yeah. So I'll probably let me explain my healing to you, because really and truly, I don't think if I hadn't have gotten my healing, I wouldn't have my side hustle.
Great. Tell me more.
Yeah. So last year in February, no, it was in January 2022, my son joined a mastermind the year before. And in January 2022, he challenged me to join this mastermind. I don't usually turn a challenge down. And not knowing, I never even knew what a mastermind was. I mean, that has just been the farthest thing from my whole world, because I have pretty much have never really lived intentionally, and I was oblivious to what was going on outside the world because I was so focused on my job and just I kind of called it chaos.
Yeah.
My life was chaos, And so I joined this mastermind, and not having any clue what it was going to do for me. My son did not talk to me about it. He didn't say, I think you need to go do this for this reason, this reason, this reason. He didn't say anything. He just said, I challenge you. And so when I got in it, I was blown away. Yeah. Because what I thought in my mind a mastermind was these billionaires, that are just huge people out there that are way above the universe that nobody knows, that it just kind of, I don't even know what I was thinking, but I didn't know what mastermind was. But I was blown away when I joined this mastermind, and I started diving into some, actually I spent, I joined February 17th, February, March, April, May, and June. I literally spent 4 months of that, my very first 4 months in the mastermind, of just reading and watching podcasts and reading other people's posts that was in this mastermind, because you get added to this group. And I, wow. And I just kept going, wow. I mean, I was mesmerized by the people that had gone through traumas, had gone through alcoholism, had gone through drug addiction, had been in prison, had been at the lowest of lows. And these people were millionaires. Some of them are billionaires. Some of them are not there. Some of them are building their machines. Some of them are just now starting out. And I started resonating with a lot of these people. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's hope for me. There's hope. Because I was so, it clicked with me finally that I was like, my son knew what he was doing. I think he saw hope for me when I didn't see any hope for myself. But he didn't want to tell me, Mother, I think you need help. I don't know if that's what he meant. I feel like that's what he meant, because when I see where I was at then and where I'm at today, it basically saved my life, honestly.
Wow, that's
I was so lost, Kate. It was crazy. Yeah. I was lost. I didn't have any direction. I didn't have any hope in myself. I didn't even have any. I was lost. I had been lost for probably 20 years. But yeah, I dug into just 4 months of reading story after story of these people of survival. Honestly, I mean, when you talk about people who have been in prison, have come out and are now successful, what all they did to change their life, And then I started, reading, listening to podcasts like Ed Milet and Andy Frisella and Ryan Stewman, all these, Brad Lee, Jesse Lee, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is changing my life completely. And so June, I was like, I need to get busy. I've wasted 4 months. And so I started diving into myself and realizing that these are some things that I want to change about myself, because I literally lost myself.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean that I had given so much to everybody else, and I didn't take care of myself.
Yeah.
And I was negative. I was bitter. I was, sad. I was suicidal. I wasn't suicidal in a point where I ever tried to attempt suicide, but I had thoughts of suicide.
This hopeless
and
this kind of lost, hopeless,
just lost, hopeless. And I went and got some help. When I recognized that point where I was at that, I had a thought of suicide again, which I had not had in a long time, and in about 5 years, but it came back again. And when it came back and I had that thought again, I was like, it's time. Yeah. And with the help of these people that I met in this mastermind, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I mean, these people, there's people in there that literally changed my life. And so I sought help. I started, getting mental help. Miranda was my mental coach. And, the hard part for me is when I had to accept that I needed mental help, there's that stigma that people think, oh, you're psychotic, But I think that's a lot of why people don't share that information, because I kept holding back this fear that people were going to think I was crazy.
Yeah. Maybe
I am, but it's true that there's the stigma that, when you actually admit that you have mental health problems, there's certain levels of that to me that, there is psychotic, but there's all different levels of mental. And I think everybody experiences mental health completely different. No two people are alike.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you had this moment, right? You had this it almost feels like this pivotal moment, right? So you're in this mastermind and you're soaking up all this new information. You're connecting with these new people. You're connecting with this new energy. But it sounds like you're also so much more aware about what's happening with you, right? In your mind, in your body, in your thinking. You're able to kind of see this kind of shadow of depression, some of these suicidal thoughts, and you really took some action, right? I mean, you took some major action here.
I did. Yes, I knew when I stopped blaming and had the victim mentality, I started taking control over my own thoughts, whereas maybe it was the devil on my shoulder trying to get me to keep those thoughts in my head. And so I quit having that victim mentality and started taking action. I started getting up. I hired Miranda. I mean, she was let me back up. I actually went and saw one other person, an LP practitioner, and I had some negative energy release done. And that took me all the way back to when I was 6 years old. And I did some negative energy release, on some stuff that was all the way back to that age.
Yeah.
And I traveled somewhere to do that and came back. And that's when I really started digging in. And that's when I had been following Miranda for a while. And I was scared because, man,
it's terrifying.
You get into those rooms. It's terrifying because, you don't want to tell everybody your issues, and so I had been to so many doctors, Kate. All my life, I had been to doctors. I've been to therapists. I've been on prescription medication for depression. And so I finally got off all those and I quit going to therapists. When I say therapist, I talk about like a doctor who prescribed me depression meds.
Yeah.
And so I quit doing all that. I quit going to them. I had to get off of it myself. She wouldn't take me off. I had to get off of it myself. And so when I got in here and I had decided that I wanted to get some mental coaching.
Yeah.
I was desperate to try anything because I had refused to go back to get on depression medication. So I was selective and I was like, I want to be very careful who I choose because I didn't just trust anybody. And then that's when, I'd been watching Miranda and finally, I don't know what it was that clicked with Miranda when I was like, okay, she's the one that I want to coach me. And man, she has worked miracles in my life. Okay. I adore her so much. I mean, and she started me on this book. I have this journal here.
Yeah.
I've had this journal forever and I've never written in it, but I loved the leather cover on it because
beautiful.
I don't know if you can see it or not.
I can, yeah.
Yeah, and it says that the leather, it's embossed and it says time to change. And I had saved this book forever because I loved it. And the paper was just beautiful. It's almost like watercolor paper. And I'd been saving this book for special times. And when I met Miranda, I pulled this book out. And she taught me how to journal. And so I began journaling, through her. And, she just taught me how to start writing out my blessings every day. I mean, she set me up with, AM journaling, what I needed to journal in the mornings. I mean, then they were specific. I needed to write out what I was grateful for every day. I needed to write out, things that I was blessed with. And then I had a PM session that, I would have to do, things in the PM and write out some wins. She taught me how to write and burn, which, I didn't really do that in the beginning. Actually, I take that back. I did do that, but I didn't never burn it.
Okay.
I took a bucket and I wrote everything down that was coming out. That I needed to burn, and I put it in a bucket, and I told her, I said, one day I'm going to burn it all together. Because I wanted that memory of how I wanted to see a bucket of how much chaos and crap and stuff that I had in my body that I honestly feel like it's stuff that I've kept in my body since I was probably 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old, that had pretty much had diseased my body mentally.
Right.
And finally, I don't know what happened, but, I've got it written down in my journal here when I burned it, but I took a video of it and burned it and sent it to Miranda. I said, I finally burned them all.
And what was that like for you, that moment when you're looking at basically kind of all the toxins and the trauma and all these events just like kind of going up in smoke and flames? What was that like for you? I can't imagine.
Well, I wasn't sure how I was going to take it, but I sat there and watched it, and I actually cried because I was like, why didn't I, you question, why didn't I know how to do this earlier? Why, I kind of questioned, why don't people know how to know this kind of help? Yeah. I mean, it's crazy because I had to get in this room to find this kind of help, which is sad to, but it's the thought that I had struggled for, let's see, 50. Well, I've been on depression meds since I was 24 years old.
Okay.
And so I have been fighting depression and battles and all this time, up until 10 years ago. So for 20 years, 20, 30, 40, no, actually 30 years.
30 years. Yeah.
Yes. 30 years of fighting depression and doctor's appointments. And, you'd probably know, trying to get into a doctor, and then it's forever to get in to see them. And then it's, you got to stair step your medication up. And then if it's not right, then you got to stair step it back down. Yeah. And then you spend a year trying to find the right medication. And then if it doesn't work, you got to start another one. And so I literally spent 30 years of doing that. Oh. And when I burned all that, I was emotional. And I was tearful. I cried because I was like, why didn't I learn how to burn all that and get it out of my body and release it? Yeah. And it felt so good to finally get rid of that. Yeah. And then that little project led me into meeting a new healer who has been healing me also. Yeah.
So I just want to take a minute and I'm just feeling so much for you right now. I'm just feeling, the struggle and this hamster wheel and this revolving door of doctors and medications and over and over and over and probably thinking, what's wrong with me? I'm crazy, right? What's wrong with me? And then getting to this point where you can, kind of release and burn, a lot of the trauma and a lot of the frankly, the crap that's been held in the body, right? That we hold in the body over years and years and years. I'm just really feeling like, no, that was just so powerful, right? So powerful. Yeah. So taking a minute and taking a breath, and was it loss? Were the tears about loss? All the loss of all the years and all the time and all the energy. So what were those tears about, in that moment when you were burning? What was that like? What was that?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. At the time that I was watching it burn, I don't think that I looked at it as I lost all those 30 years. Hang on just a second. Sorry.
Take your time. This is a lot. So I want you to just take your time. And what's coming up? What are you feeling? What's coming up?
Yeah. I think, when I was watching it burn, I felt like I'm finally free. Because I knew that it was working.
Oh, okay.
I knew that what I had found and the things that I was doing was finally working. That was my first thought. I felt like I was like, okay, I think I'm getting some freedom.
Freedom and relief and the lightness. Oh, yeah. That is so powerful.
Yeah. The other thoughts came, you were just saying,
Yeah.
Did I feel like I wasted 30 years? Of course I did. I mean, I look at myself now, I'm 60 years old, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have wasted so much of my life. But I've learned you can't do that.
Yeah. Why can't you do that? Why can't you do that? Why? That's just thought stories, right? The crappy thought stories. Why can't you do that? Tell listeners why you can't do that. I think it's
well, I can't, because if I go back and start trying to put some processes together on how I lost out on 30 years of my life, I can't forget that I also had a son. And, I'm grateful for that. I have happy times. I've never tried to commit suicide. I've wanted to. So while it was a loss, I'm grateful for what I've gone through. I'm at that point now where I have to really think, because those times do come up. The past does come up. My second marriage, my first marriage, they come back. Do I regret them? Some of them, no, I don't regret. I'm glad that I got a divorce. Some of them I do regret. What I found myself doing was staying in the past when I started doing that. And I was like, I can't do that anymore.
That's right.
So I journal about it. Yeah. I journal about my thoughts.
Yeah.
I journal it, but I try to I try to write it down as much, but I try to keep it out of here, because if I do that, my mind starts taking over. Right. And that's a crazy thing, because man, when your mind, I call them squirrels.
Yeah. Yeah.
They go here, they go there, they go here, and if I let that take over, then I start becoming depressed again. Right. Because, for instance, right now I'm just like, oh my God, why did I do that? Because I could have been doing that, when I'm wasting all my energy on what I didn't do, when I need to be focusing all my energy on what I'm doing now.
Yeah. What you can, right? What you have control over now, right? Controllables now, right? The past is past, and we can honor it and we can learn from it, but we don't have to live in it. Right? We don't have to live in it. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Ooh, powerful. story. Powerful story. So I want to check in. How are you doing? You doing okay? How are you doing? How are you feeling? Okay. Okay.
Am I doing okay right now? Yes, I'm doing it. It's very emotional.
Yeah, it is.
I wrote a post the other day, Kate, that when I'm going through this healing, but I don't share it. I share what I can, because I want other people I want to help other people. If it resonates with them and it gives them any kind of hope, that's great. But I haven't shared anything with my family or my husband or my kids because it hasn't presented itself.
Yeah.
And so I still have some burdens that I feel like are not resolved. And maybe they don't ever get resolved. I don't know, but it hasn't presented itself to where my kids are asking me, hey, what's going on? They know. My son knows that I've changed. My son knows because he's in the same mastermind and he's going through the same thing I'm going through. He's improving himself. He's leveling up. He's going on, energy healing. He's, taking care of his fitness and his mental health. He doesn't have mental health like I did, but I mean, he's gone through, I had him and divorced at 3. And, he has, blended families. He's got his own mental issues that have happened, within his dad and his wife's thing. He's got his own. So he's also growing. But those who don't go through that process, sometimes they don't understand, what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
And then they tend to distance themselves from you because they don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think that's because, Miranda had taught me early on, Miranda taught me to start setting my boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
Because, there was things going on. And so she taught me to set your boundaries and stick to them. And that was one thing I had to journal about too.
Yeah.
And so when I started setting myself boundaries, to start healing and stop letting myself be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
Of course, that created friction.
Yeah.
And so
like
they were like, yeah, I mean, my some of my kids were like, I'm, wondering why I didn't go to Christmas. Why don't I go somewhere? Why don't I go do this? And I had set myself and said, I'm setting a boundary and I'm not going to go and do something because of what somebody else wants me to do. I'm now going to do for me.
Powerful. That's really,
and that included my husband too.
Yeah.
If I didn't want to do something, and he didn't understand why, it created some problems. I mean, he told me, I was sabotaging my marriage. I'm sabotaging my relationship with my kids and my bonus kids. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm healing. I'm going through a process that, I need to get healthy.
That's so powerful.
So not being able to talk to my kids and tell my kids, that's what I was going through. And I thought when I started this, I even asked somebody on a podcast. In fact, I think it was Miranda's coach, Stacy.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, how long does it take to go through a healing? And she's like, I felt so stupid.
Okay.
Because what mine could be 1 year. It's actually been, coming up on 1 year, but it could be another 10 years.
Could be a lifetime.
Don't see that. It could be, that's right. I feel like it's a lifetime of healing yourself. And to me, it's almost like not forcing myself to live intentionally. I'm living intentionally now.
And there's such a difference, right? That then living intentionally, than being what I call like kind of being yanked around by everybody else, right? By everybody just being yanked around, pulled like a rag doll, pulled here and pulled there, and nothing is intentional about the way your life is. I mean, I totally hear you. especially I think as a woman, as a mom, as a grandmother, as an employee, right? I mean, we are just pulled and pulled and pulled in a gazillion directions. And before we know it, it's like, who am I? Who am I? What do I want? What do I even believe? What's even important to me? So, yeah, totally connect with what you're saying. Totally connect.
Yeah, and I think that's how I got lost. I mean, I was living for everybody else and not for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to tell a lot, I'm a therapist, right? And I see a lot of women, and I hear that a lot. Like women, I don't know, probably another podcast, but I see that a lot. Like women, that comes up a lot. Like women serving and doing and bending over backwards for everybody else, but not caring for themselves. And then this weird thing comes up when women start to care for themselves. This weird thing comes up. This is selfish, or I'm feeling guilty, or, and I'm going to do some podcasts on that, because I have to tell you, I hear that all the time. Well, I just feel so guilty. I feel guilty going for that run, or I feel guilty going out with my friends, or I feel guilty going to that yoga class. Guilty? No guilt needed. You're taking care of yourself, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I went through that phase of feeling guilty at first. I mean, literally, Kate, I did not go to my kids' Christmas. I went to my son's Christmas. I went down. I wanted to be with my child. My child lives far away.
Yeah.
His kids live close by.
Yeah.
But because I was going through through that healing process, and I had set myself boundaries, I had said, I am not going to go and put myself somewhere where I'm not appreciated, where I'm disrespected, where I'm not loved. And so I drew that line and I stuck to it, and it involved me not going to Christmas. It involved me not going to some birthday parties. It involved me not going to activities, but I had to do it because I was so focused on getting my life back. Yeah. And I knew the short-term pain was going to get me the long-term results that I wanted.
Yes. And I have to tell you, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I'm sure it hurt, it may have hurt.
Yep.
But in the long run, I hope that my kids and my husband see that, I had to do it for me.
Better for you, better for them, right? Better for you, better.
Yeah. Right. And I don't know if they even feel that to this day. I haven't had the opportunity to even explain to them the burdens that I was going through and the pain that I was going through. I don't know if I ever will. If the opportunity, exists, then I would share it.
Yeah.
But it's not something that I can just go and sit down to them and explain to them, this is what I've done. This is it. I'm not going to do that.
Necessary. It's not needed. But I also want to honor and validate how much courage this takes, right? You must be terrified. I mean, I can't imagine what your body was feeling, what your gut was feeling, the anxiety. I mean, it must have been probably one of the hardest things that you've done. It takes so much courage.
It is truly one of the hardest. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. To choose. I almost wanted to call it a life or death situation, because to me, I was at a point that, I was getting those thoughts again that I didn't want to be here. And then, so I was like, I'm going to do this because nothing else has worked. So I'm taking a chance on getting my life together and maybe ruining my marriage. Could have been. Maybe ruining my relationship with my bonus daughters. Could be. I still don't know. I don't have those answers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of the most courageous things I've had to do, and it's very, very hard to do. And I feel like a lot of people don't do that for fear of what. I mean, it takes a lot of work, and it takes commitment.
Yeah. And courage, ton of courage, and probably a ton of faith,
Yeah.
right? A ton of courage and a ton of faith. And yeah. So again, wow.
Yeah, I would say courage and faith. It takes people like Miranda. It takes people like my healer, Krista. I mean, because I couldn't do it without them.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they were literally coaching me and guiding me, and I couldn't do it on my own. I would have not even known how to do this on my own.
Got it. So I'm also hearing the importance of kind of team and community, right? Having support, having people that are really in your corner, and how
Yes.
critical that was. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very critical. Finding the right people is.
Yeah.
I'm going to go right back to the mastermind. Had I not gotten into this mastermind, I mean, I thank God every day for my son, you know, and I look back now and I'll tell you, when I was like, I wonder why my son didn't tell me, Mom, I think you need to do this for your mental health. Well, he was just trying to be, you know, I think he wanted me to get in and find out for myself. He didn't want to guide me. Okay, go do this, go do that, go do this. You need to go and get in it and go find your own way, like he did.
Yeah.
And, you know, and he's on his own little journey. And so he did it in a beautifully and gracefully way for his own mother. And I thank God every day for that, because, you know, my son's seen me struggle. And he got in that mastermind and then thought, okay, you know, Mom, I'm challenging you, knowing that I think he knew what I was getting into and what I was going to find. And so, and it did happen. It completely changed my life, because I got around the right people. I would have never met these people, or met these kinds of people who have gone through, basically, to me, hell and back. Yeah. Because, you know, the level of what's the word I want to use? I mean, you can't imagine the different, what's the word I'm trying to think of? I mean, like I said, you got people who have been in prison, you got drug addicts, you got alcoholics, you've got people who tried to commit suicide and committed suicide and came back, and people who've been divorced and lost everything and came back, and people who've been to war, lost a leg and came back, and women who, like me, who have, you know, given their entire life and never took care of themselves. I mean, the broad range of people that I have met who have been who were up here, built themselves up all their life, came back down, totally lost their life, and they're rebuilding their life back up. I would have never met any of those people had I not got into this mastermind. Yeah, I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the side hustle at 60. I think that's so inspirational, so powerful. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, when I met Miranda, you know, I was doing my mental coaching with her. And, you know, about 4 months into my mental coaching, I picked that up so quick. And I was tired of mentally coaching myself, because I was like, I felt like, you know, I just kept going in and regurgitating the same things over and over and over. And I was like, I'm ready to go. On my wings, I'm ready to go and be a butterfly. You know, I've been this caterpillar, and now I need new growth. I've got to go do something. I don't want to sit in a mental coaching and keep crying and over spilled milk.
Got it.
Basically.
Got it.
And so I had told her, I was like, Miranda, I want to start a business. And she's like, well, what do you want to do? And I had told her, I was like, well, I've always wanted to own, you know, a clothing boutique, because I'm a huge clothing and shoe person and jewelry.
Got it.
And she's like, well, let's do it. Let's do it. And I was like, okay. And so, of course, I talked to my son about everything. And I called him and told, I did call him and talk to him about it. And he's like, Mom, he said, listen, he said, you're at retirement age. You're coming up on retirement age. You know, you're fixing to be 60. in January this year. I was 60. And he's like, are you still thinking of clothing? No, he's like, what are you thinking? And I said, well, I've always wanted to do a clothing boutique. And he's like, Mother, he goes, listen, he goes, I want you to think about it. He goes, I'm not telling you can't do this. He said, but you're fixing to be 60. It's a lot of work. You're going to have to find help, which help is very hard to find.
Yeah.
And he said, you're going to have to be working 7 days a week. That means you're going to be working weekends. You were already talking about you and Ken traveling. And, the first 1 year, 2 years of your business, you're not going to be able to do any of that. He said, so I challenge you to rethink opening a clothing boutique. Find something else. But he said, I want to give you some advice. He said, I want you to find a need that needs to be solved and where you can serve the community. He said, so think about it.
Beautiful question.
Find a need.
That is a beautiful question. Wow.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, I am serving people. Women need clothes, Like, Mother, no. And so I was like, okay, I got it. What he said. And so I thought about it for 2 weeks. And I came back and I said, okay, I think I found something else. And he goes, okay, what? And I said, well, I think I'm going to do vintage items in a boutique. And he's like, Mom, so
that's still
how is that serving? Yes. He said, Mom, that's even worse. He said, you not only, clothes, and shoes, but he goes, you do vintage, because I was thinking flowers and little knickknacks. And he goes, that's even worse than clothes. And he goes, and it's not serving. And I'm like, well, it is kind of serving. He's like, no, you know what I'm talking about. And so I was like, oh. So I went back and I prayed for 2 months, literally just trying to figure out, what am I going to do? And Miranda's just like, it'll come. Don't push it. Don't force it. It will come. And so I did. I prayed about it and just sat on it and prayed. I really, honestly, I wasn't even thinking. I was just like praying that, something would pop in my mind. I wasn't writing anything down like, oh, this or that or anything like that. And one day I was sitting in my car, get ready to leave work, and I got on Facebook and I followed this guy. His name is Texas 2.0 Cop. And he is a big, huge cop that does kind of he's a cop in Texas, but he does kind of parody stuff. He still does his job, but he does kind of parody stuff on Facebook,
Yeah.
And everybody loves him. And he's funny. He's always holding up, his handcuffs, and telling, doing little things, saying that, they need to be handcuffed or whatever. Well, this day, I could tell, I hadn't watched the video yet, but I could tell something was off with him.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my God, I need to watch that. And I watched it and he was crying. And he said, listen up, ladies. He said, I need to talk to you because I'm begging you to listen to me. And I kept going and he said, I'm begging you, single ladies, single moms with children at their side, women who are runners, realtors, anybody, women in general. But, he was basically, trying to get women to listen up to him in those categories. And he said, I'm begging you to strap up. And I was like, wow. Wonder what's going on. And and literally he's crying.
Yeah.
You could see
the emotion.
Big bulky dude. Big guy. Muscled up, but and I'm like, wow, this is not normal for him.
Yeah.
And he said, I need to tell you, he said, I have friends on the border. I have custom border agents who are my friends. I have law enforcement officers who are my friends. who are on the borders, and they're begging me, and they are begging the law enforcement agencies throughout the states to educate women to strap up.
So when you say
he
strap
said,
up, what does that mean? What does strap up mean?
Carry.
Oh, got it.
Carry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he went on to say that he goes, I can't tell you what to do. He said, but I'm just giving you a heads up. You need to start strapping up.
Wow.
You need to start living. You need to start watching what you're doing, watching where you're going.
Wow.
You need to start making sure that you watch out for your own safety. You need to keep your phones out of your hands. He said, because I'm telling you, he said, the border agencies are begging the police departments, not all of them, certain agencies, and they're begging their friends. All of them are touching out to their friends that are law enforcement officers and telling them, begging them to start educating women. It just clicked with me, and I was like, oh my God, there's my need.
Yeah.
And I can serve the women because I'm a domestic violence survivor. I'm also a sexual assault supporter to two of my family members, who I've actually witnessed that happen at age 5 and 6. And I was like, there it is right there. And I'm like, oh my God, why did I not think of that all these years? I've experienced all that, and it never crossed my mind. But I go back to that, Kate, thinking that, I never even lived intentionally like I do now. I mean, when I leave the house, I leave intentionally knowing what I'm going to do. People are just so oblivious. They walk out with their cell phones while they're walking, Yeah. And because I was living in such almost kind of call it chaos.
Yeah.
I wasn't living intentionally. I was just living, I think they call it subconsciously, that I never even thought to be an educator at such a young age. I could have been doing this 30 years ago and educating women for, not even, at maybe 18, I could have, but, I got married at 21. No, I got married at 24 and was domestic violence. And that's why I left my marriage. I was either going to be killed or I was either going to live and die trying, or I was going to die leaving. And I chose to try, to leave, but I might die if I leave too. And that was at age 24. And so I was like, I could have been educating women at the age of 24 on up, and look how much farther I would have been. But the trauma.
Right. Exactly.
It wasn't the right timing, and you experience that trauma, and that trauma just blocks you. I never understood that until I met with my healer, and I even asked her, I was like, Krista, what happens? And she's like, when you experience trauma like that, she goes, you block it out.
Yeah.
Like for me, and I'm kind of diving off into a different area, but I want to give you a scenario that for other people to make sense.
Yeah.
I experienced the sexual assault, witnessed that on a family member by another family member. And to this day, I hate sex. And I didn't understand that. And Krista told me, she's like, because you've blocked that out all these years because of what you experienced as a child.
That's right.
So I did the same thing when I had the domestic violence where my first husband tried to kill me.
Yes.
And then I've had these blocks all my life. That's probably why my second marriage didn't last. That's why my third marriage that I'm in now has been tumultuous, and until I started getting healing. I'm 20 years in on this marriage, but it's been a hell of a ride because of the trauma that I suffered that I never got healing for.
That's right.
And it's like you block it out, and you block yourself from doing things that keeps you from, becoming a better person.
Yeah, that's right.
So I was just like, why did I not do that all these years? And you can't do that. You can't continue to go back and question it.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to my son and said, okay, I think I found what I want to do. And I told him I want to teach and coach about situational awareness and self-defense and safety devices. And he's like, okay, now we're getting somewhere, Mother.
Yay!
And yes. And he goes, now I want you to go educate yourself and get good at it.
Okay. So tell us about your business. Tell us about your side hustle. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So, So when I did that, it's the craziest thing. I went online and I bought all this stuff. I think I spent about $2,000 worth of stuff because I was going to just promote my own business. I was going to build my own safety stuff. Okay. I was going to get the pepper sprays. I was going to get the Kubotons. I was going to get, all this stuff and build my own wristlets and everything. And I ordered all this stuff and it was crap. It didn't have any safety features on it. It didn't have, good, it didn't have good reviews. And I was like, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to have to really decide what I want to promote.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to put stuff in people's hands that was going to get them killed. I didn't want to put stuff in people's hands who they might have used it and it could have accidentally killed somebody else because it didn't have a safety feature on it, because then it could come back on me.
Yeah.
So I spent about almost a month of just doing prototypes and different wristlets and different devices. And I could not find anything. And I boxed it all up and sent it back and started from scratch.
Yeah.
And so my husband, he and I went to a car show up at Carswell Air Force Base. And he goes, remember that wristlet that I bought you? And I was like, yeah, I bought that wristlet, girl. It was a self-defense wristlet. I bought it, put it up in my closet, never to use it again because
never to be seen again.
Yeah. And so I had recently just started also on my health journey. I was just started walking.
Okay.
And and Ken was like, well, where's your safety wristlet? And I was like, I don't need that, Well, then a girl got killed in Tennessee. The runner got killed in Tennessee. She got murdered. And then Ken was like, he's like, you really need to start doing something.
Yeah.
And so I went upstairs and got that bracelet. And got it out and looked at it, and it had damsel in defense on it. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I looked up damsel in defense, and sure enough, they were a direct selling association. And, you can become, a pro with them and sell their product. So I'm a sales rep for them, but it's my own company. And so I called Miranda and asked Miranda, hey, can we still build me as my machine, but I sell damsel? And she's like, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we decided to do that. And that's how I came up with Warrior Up. I'm still building. Yeah, I'm still building my own brand, but I'm also, I have damsel in defense devices that, I can, that I can educate people on how to carry, which devices to carry. But I also am getting my own line of self-defense items. I'm coming out with a knife that I want to, put up under Warrior Up.
Wow.
And that's how it was born. And it's just taken off from there. And eventually I would love to get it up and running, which I'm working on, and Miranda's been helping me with. I'm actually going to be speaking on her stage in the Dominican.
Oh, cool.
On self-defense and situational awareness.
Yeah.
So that's really my first big stage presence that I have with self-defense. And then maybe eventually, I'll quit my full-time job, and then I want to travel in a bus and go, find little festivals and arts things that I can set up booths and just travel the U.S. and go and stay for a couple weeks and maybe do a couple booths and then go home and then come back and restock and go at it again.
Oh, that's fantastic. Wow, your journey has just been full of twists and turns, but look where you are today, right? I mean, you're a strong advocate for safety and women and girls, and really almost come full circle, right? Back to your childhood and back to your 20s. And really advocating for women and safety. I mean, that's really powerful.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kate. It's my mission, and I have a heart for it now, and it's so needed, especially right now. It's needed. I'm shocked when I'm trying to educate people, because women, it's okay, because I'm seeing that, women do want to strap up. Women do want to take, more initiative to start taking their safety in their own hands.
Yeah.
But I'm more shocked, and I hate to say this, but I'm more shocked that my avatar was not going to be targeting men to sell to or to educate. But I'm finding that I also need to educate men, because when I do talk to men, I ask them, hey, do you educate your wife on when she leaves the house, does she have her gun? Does she have her stun device? And they say no. I go, why? Do you educate your teen when she goes out? Does she have some type of alarm that if she gets, abducted, if she gets date raped and she feels like something's wrong, is there an alarm that she can? No. Does she have anything? No. Do you even educate her daughter? Where's your wristlet at? Does she have a tracking device that if she was to get abducted and she gets thrown in a van and she can't push a button and it notifies your phone that she's been abducted, and you can see where she has been taken to, because she has a device on that notes your phone, and you know where she's at. Otherwise, and they're like, no.
Wow.
I was shocked because they just said, I just never thought about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really have even refocused my my avatar to go in and start. I'm actually educating. I want to educate everybody.
Yeah.
Even young kids.
Right. I mean, I'm even thinking, about schools, like kind of going into schools and, rec centers and YMCAs and Girl Scouts and, right?
Yes.
And, wow. I mean, as you're talking.
It's actually, I mean, you think, because I think, I'm just going to target domestic violence women or sexual assaulted women.
Yeah.
No, it's everybody, because I still need to educate the women who it hasn't happened to, because 1 in 3 women are being assaulted, and you get in one small room, a group of girls. I mean, that's 2 girls or 1 girl out of a small group.
That's right.
And so I need to educate everybody, even young children. I mean, it starts at an early age. I mean, I need to start educating them on, what to look for. I need to educate the parents on how to educate your teens and your young teens for when they go to somebody else's house and you don't go and set up in somebody's lap that you don't know, or you don't go over to somebody's house who's got dogs that you want to doggy or whatever. There's ways you can teach your children when they're visiting other homes what to look for. They call them heart defenders. So you teach them how to be a heart defender for other kids, that they learn it for themselves, but they also are defending other children who they see that might be a potential for somebody to take advantage of. Yeah.
Wow. That's so powerful. I'm just feeling resonating. Well, I don't want to get into this too much in the story, but I've had a couple of incidents myself, like kind of out on the trail, kind of running, and a couple of scary things. And I didn't have any defense on me. I didn't have any pepper spray, and thankfully I was able to kind of use my body and really kind of get powerful and just hold the guy off, and he ran, and I was okay, but it was terrifying, and
Uh,
that was a public park, right? I mean, that wasn't like
yes.
some scary little alley at night. I mean, that was in the daylight. I was actually, Miranda was tiny. I had her on the front in a kind of a snuggly, and this guy came out of nowhere, kind of threatening us and blah blah blah.
Oh
And
my
it
gosh.
was terrifying, right? But anyway,
Yeah.
I was able to hold my ground and hold him off. He ran up that way, and I ran down the hill. But this shit happens, right?
Yes.
It really
It
does.
does. It does. And it happens more often than people think and
Yeah,
know,
yeah. So
you
this is
know.
powerful work, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
What an amazing way to spend the next 10 or 15 or 20 years, right? Really advocating for women and girls and safety and wow.
I know when I look at that, and I was, you were talking earlier about, did I feel like I wasted 30 years? But I'm like, I'm only 60. And while some people think that's old, you know, I feel like I'm just getting started. I mean, even at 60, that's not old. I still have if I want to live till my grandbabies are in college and get married, and that may be another 30 years, and if I keep my mental health well and my physical health well,
Yes.
I can have another 30 years to live and
Absolutely.
educate,
Yeah.
Basically, I'm making up for the lost time, but now I'm actually serving,
Yes.
but
you're serving for sure the planet, universe, right? But you're also serving yourself. I mean, it just feels like you're so aligned, right? Just
yes,
so aligned with your beliefs and your thoughts and experiences, and your whole life has brought you to this point, right?
I do feel that way.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I wouldn't be where I'm at today doing what I'm doing if I didn't have what happened.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's right.
Thankfully it wasn't, it was violence, and the point that, I had a broken nose, I had a broken thumb, I had a black eyes, but I could have been killed. I didn't have it to that point, but it could have led to that point. But I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today if I hadn't have gone through that. I wouldn't be able to do and teach, even though this is more situational awareness and self-defense, it also is a mindset, because you cannot go and do that kind of self-defense and situational awareness if your mind's not right.
Yeah.
And I learned this from Tony Blair. I was watching a podcast the other day, and he's like, if you don't have your mindset to say that I am going to defend myself if something happens to me, you will never make it. He said, you will not make it. You've got to know in your heart, I will fight for my life.
Yeah.
I will fight for my kids' life. I will fight for my baby's life.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, a stun gun's not going to do anything but get you killed, probably, or hurt, because your mindset is not there enough to fight back and enough to, wrestle and get your gun out, or wrestle to get your knife or your stun gun to be able to hurt somebody, because your mind's like, you're not being situationally aware. You're not living intentionally. And in living intentionally means that when you go out, when you go to a store, you need to make sure you're not on. That's intentional. You do not get on your phone when you walk from the store to your car. Do not get on your phone while you're walking down the street. You see, it's crazy. You can see when you're walking in public, every single person is on their phone.
Yeah. Yeah. So give listeners a couple of tips, people that are listening, some of these safety tips. I've read a couple on your Facebook, but I don't want to burst your bubble, but give listeners a couple of kind of really, everyday tips that they can start to kind of incorporate into their lives. Yeah.
And the number one thing that I would say, again, I'm going to go right back to what I just said. I mean, your mindset. You have to get it in your mind that are you willing to fight for your life? If you're not willing to do that, that is a problem. Are you willing to fight for your babies that's on your hip? Are you willing to fight for your life if somebody tried to pick you up and put you in a van? Are you going to kick, scratch, scream, try to hurt them? Because that's what you got to do. You got to live with intent it sounds bad, but you got to live with the intent to hurt somebody to keep yourself alive. That to me is your most critical thinking, is your mindset. The next thing I would do is to learn education on how to use body language. And by body language is that you always make eye contact, because an attacker is relying on you looking away or looking down when somebody walks by. Eye contact is always a plus, because if you can identify them, that's critical. Another critical thing is like you did, you learn to
make yourself big, right, and powerful, and confident, solid. You got to have confidence. You got to have, you keep your distance, and use your voice, because somebody could be approaching you and you could say back off. Well, you can just say back off, instead of back off. Really powerful voice, and use your voice, and you're stern with them. So body language and your voice is very powerful. I'm gonna just pause you there. I mean, I hadn't really made this connection with myself, but that's exactly, somehow unconsciously, that's exactly what I did. All right, I made my body big and stood in that kind of power pose, and my arm was out, and I was like, no. And he, again, after it felt like forever, but after, I don't know, maybe 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, he got scared and he ran off. But that's exactly what happens. Yep.
That's perfect. And I mean, it's because, think about it, Kate. I mean, if women are not going to carry, you're going to have to use your voice and your body.
Yeah.
But your mindset's got to be first.
Yeah.
And your body language.
Yep.
Things that you can do. I mean, there's things. Use your hands. Keep them at a distance. Don't ever let them get close to you. Because once they get close to you, that's it. They can take you down.
Yeah.
So your body language, keeping your arms distance, keeping your feet. People don't know this. You don't want to stand, with your feet together. If you feel like you're being threatened, you need to stand with your feet apart and kind of at an angle, because you don't want, that's the last thing you want them to do is get you down on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then your voice. And then, from there, there's still other things that, are, can be taught. But to me, those are the most critical. And then you start layering up that with devices, what you feel comfortable carrying, and it all just depends, when I talk to people about, what they want to carry, I ask a lot of questions, because not everybody's comfortable carrying a gun. Most women will not carry a gun.
Yeah.
And then, do you feel comfortable using a stun device? Those are questions I had to ask. Are your kids able to use a stun device? A lot of women call me and ask me about their teen. What can I put on my teen to help? I ask those same questions. Is she of age where she's a mount signed? Has a mindset to understand that, this is not a toy.
Yeah.
You have to ask all kinds of questions.
Right.
Are they mature enough to carry one?
A
lot of places, they don't let kids carry anything at school.
Right.
So then if that's the case, then I have to go into the other areas. I mean, have alarms. I have GPS alarms that are, have a decimal that's piercing. And then I also have, another GPS, I have a GPS alarm that's got a silent sound that when it's activated, it will notify 5 people of on the phone what's going on with that person and that she's in distress. I also have another alarm that's for smaller kids, because, smaller kids can't carry a Kubaton or anything.
Yeah.
I have GPS alarms that, that kid can know that, they can push an alarm and it can go off. Now, it all depends on, the age and, how the parents are going to be educated, and then how the parents will educate their children and make sure that they know it's not a toy.
It's powerful. There was one thing on your Facebook the other day, I think I saw that something about an elevator, right? If you're in an elevator, there's this place that people should stand. Just give us that quick tip as well, because I felt that was really powerful. So give me that tip.
Yeah. So, when you walk into an elevator, I used to do it. I'd get in the elevator. I'd go straight to the back.
Yeah, me too.
Well, yeah. What if you go to the next floor? You go down to the, you could be going down to the basement of something, and somebody could get on, and then you are at the back of the elevator, and then you don't have, and say he's an attacker, and then you're stuck. So I learned that you need to stand by the door. Irregardless, if somebody comes in and they want to try to push you, do not move, and you stay as close as, give them enough room where they can push their button if they have to, but you stay right there so that you have control of that door, and it needs to be opened, or you can push the alarm if they start attacking you.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Because, sometimes you get in and you stand right in the middle and you got people behind you. Well, you don't know who's there.
Yeah.
So it's not good to be at the back.
Yeah.
Not good to be at the front, but stand to the side at the door.
Yeah.
Either side, but preferably the side that has the controls.
Got it. I love that tip. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Wow, we have covered so much ground today. So much. And I'm so grateful. So in my last question, it can be about anything we've talked about today, or just, if there was one piece, right, through all your life and everything you've experienced, one piece of kind of sage advice for listeners, about kind of living their best life, what would that be? What would that be?
If I could tell my younger self, or anybody for that matter, I would say read self-help books, educate yourself by reading, and continue to read, and never stop learning, because you can get complacent.
Yeah.
And you can think that, I know everything. No, you don't. You have to continually be evolving. Our world is changing every single day.
Fast. Yeah.
And so, I would say those two things. And then the other thing that I feel like in my heart that I wished I would have known, and I wish somebody would told me, was that learn financials at an early age.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. I didn't have a mother and father who taught me that. I didn't learn it in school.
Yeah.
And of course, I didn't go get an education. I started young and have worked my way up in the corporate world without a degree.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the financial education, but, that is one thing that I learned late in life that I regret.
Got it. So read, lifelong learning, and making sure that you're dialed in with some good, sound financial knowledge and background. Yeah.
Yes.
That is sage advice. And I'm saying yes, yes, and yes.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yes, yes, and yes. So Tracy, thank you. You've been amazing. So powerful, so much content, just so heartfelt, so courageous. I just can't thank you enough for coming on today. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. I truly appreciate you and your time. I love to hear from listeners, so connect with me at katechampionauthor.com. Remember to grab your free hiking guide, and please take a quick moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Thanks so much. Take care. Until next time.